Think baseball's all about the legends you know? Ruth, Mays, Aaron. Think again. There's a whole parallel hall of games, seasons, and stories filled with players whose brilliance was every bit as bright, but didn't echo through time. Today, we're expanding the spotlight with 10 more MLB legends who faded into the margins, even though they once shook the world. Stick around. These tales are surprising and absolutely unforgettable. We've lined up sluggers, pioneers, workhorse aces, and even a barrier-breaking trailblazer whose story is bittersweet. For each, you'll hear what made them exceptional, how their career rivaled or even surpassed better-remembered names, and why, despite it all, their legacy got lost. Let's meet the unsung stars of baseball's golden pages. First on the list today is Harry Heilmann, the Tigers' batting phantom, 1920s. Harry Heilmann was a hitting ghost in the best sense. Quiet, consistent, and impossible to ignore if you dug into the box score. From 1921 to 1924, he won 4 American League batting titles, including a .403 season in 1923. His approach at the plate was pure. He hit line drives, rarely struck out, and punished mistakes like a scalpel. Over his career, he notched 2,757 hits, 1,540 RBIs, and rapped with a slugging percentage north of .500. All remarkable in the lively, offense-rich era. Facing legends like Ruth and Gehrig, he wore no nickname and craved no spotlight, but his bat spoke for itself. His career was cut short by illness in the early 1930s, and by then, stars with flashier stories had stolen the narrative. That's why today, if you ask an average fan to name a top 10 hitter of the 1920s, Heilmann disappears from the discussion, despite routinely out-hitting many who are regularly hailed. At number 2 is Ralph Kiner, the hidden powerhouse, 1946 to 1955. Ralph Kiner had a simple encore: hit home runs. A lot of them. He led the National League in homers every full season he played from 1946 to 1952, peaking at an astonishing 54 in 1949. His career totals of 369 homers and 1,015 RBIs came despite playing most of his career on middling Pittsburgh Pirates teams that rarely sniffed the playoffs. He was a fearsome bat, yet overshadowed by Yankees dynasties and quieter stars. In addition, chronic back issues forced him to retire at 32. He pivoted to broadcasting, where he became a beloved voice, but that also meant his feats as a hitter faded from memory. Imagine a world where Kiner's nickname, Kiner the Slayer, joined the vocabulary of great sluggers, and then consider how quickly a lifetime of firepower went dim, because it wasn't paired with team success or longevity. At number 3 is Roy Campanella, the legend silenced too soon, 1948 to 1957. Roy Campanella was more than a catcher. He was the heartbeat of the Brooklyn Dodgers in the late 1940s and early 1950s. 3-time National League MVP, a .276 lifetime average combined with 241 home runs, and a clutch postseason presence. He caught 4 consecutive World Series champions in the Dodgers, and his leadership was pivotal as Brooklyn transitioned into one of baseball's premier franchises. Then, in early 1958, a devastating car accident paralyzed him from the waist down and forced his sudden retirement. Campy went on to become a beloved educator and coach, but the abrupt end stopped the story mid-sentence. Today, he's revered in historical accounts, but in the casual memory of baseball fans, his name still doesn't resonate like that of other great catchers. That gap isn't about ability, it's about fate, timing, and a career ended just when the spotlight should have gone brighter. At number 4 is Cy Williams, NL's early home run pioneer, 1912 to 1930. Cy Williams had timing, both literally and figuratively. He arrived in the majors just as the dead ball era gave way to the live ball. When home runs became legit weapons, he embraced that. Williams led the NL in homers 4 times and accumulated 251 career homers, a massive total for someone who began in 1912. Batting .292 with over 1,300 hits, he helped shift the league's focus toward power. But he played in the shadow of Ruth's all-consuming narrative and never had the same marketing machine behind him. His early 1920s feats were overshadowed by Yankee dynasties, so his role in transforming power hitting in the National League slipped into footnotes. A brilliant hitter, a power pioneer. Somebody really should tell that story more often. At number 5, Dave Stieb, the Blue Jays' quiet ace, 1979 to 1998. Between the late 70s and early 90s, Dave Stieb quietly built one of baseball's most consistent pitching cases. A 7-time All-Star, he posted a .329 career ERA, threw nearly 1,900 strikeouts, and led the AL in wins and ERA multiple seasons. He emblemized the Blue Jays' rise from expansion team to contender, yet he never became a face of baseball. He was durable, throwing at least 200 innings in 9 straight seasons, and nearly no-hittered 5 times before finally completing one in 1990. But pitching for a non-legacy franchise during an era dominated by electric flash against star-laden teams left his greatness under the radar. To see Steve today is to recognize a pitcher whose brilliance was never flashy or flattering, but who could own a game without headlines. At number 6 on the list, Darrell Evans, Patience is Power, 1970 to late 80s. Darrell Evans was the epitome of disciplined power. Over a 22-season career, he hit 414 home runs while drawing over 1,600 walks, ranking him among the most patient and powerful hitters of his generation. He led the league in homers in 1973 and again in 1985, showing an uncommon late-career spark. His batting average hovered around .248, but to him, plate awareness was the gospel. He ranked in the top 10 in on-base percentage several times, yet because he wasn't pursuing high average or the spotlight, and because he played for teams that didn't grab headlines, his balanced, undervalued approach got overlooked. Evans shows that there are multiple forms of offensive greatness, and that patience and sneaky power can be just as devastating as raw batting skill. And now it's time for the 7th inning stretch fun fact. Today we're talking about Rube Waddell.
All right, folks, time for your 7th inning stretch fun fact. And today we're talking about the wildest arm and possibly the wildest personality in baseball history, Rube Waddell. This Hall of Fame lefty in the early 1900s could strike out batters like it was nothing. But he was also famously distracted by shiny objects, fire trucks, and puppies. No, seriously. Teammates claimed games had to pause because he'd wander off to play with dogs. Waddell once struck out 349 batters in a single season, a record that stood for more than 60 years. On the mound, he was virtually untouchable, leading the league in strikeouts 6 years in a row. Off the mound, let's just say you never quite knew if he was headed to the ballpark or the circus. Baseball's never seen another like him, and probably never will. And now, back to the action.
Thanks, announcer guy. At number 7 on the list is Bobby Abreu, the silent 5-tool maestro, 1990s to 2000s. Bobby Abreu was a walking, slapping, clutching 5-tool machine and the most underrated superstar of his generation. He had over 400 home runs, 400-plus on-base percentages, elite defensive range, and elite base stealing ability, but never a single MVP vote. He was an all-star 5 times, a 3-time Francisco League batting leader in OBP, and yet he remained under the narrative radar. Abreu's game was smooth, polished, and efficient, working counts, walking when needed, stretching singles into doubles, backing up bases turned into an art. He accumulated 2,470 hits, 1,330 RBIs, and posted 117 career WAR, right up there with big names of his time. But his quiet excellence never demanded spectator attention, even as it quietly filled stat lines with impact. At number 8 is Kenny Lofton, Speed Painted in Blue, 1991 to 2007. Kenny Lofton flew. He wasn't a power hitter. His career average landed right around .299, but he manufactured runs like a magician. He stole over 600 bases, scored nearly 2,000 runs, and reached 2,400 hits, all while being one of the fastest men baseball produced. His 9 consecutive Gold Glove nominations, 4 All-Star selections, and 2 batting titles testify to a complete skill set. He was the catalyst for every offense he joined, scratching runs, stealing intimidation, and sliding into corners. Yet now, casual fans often refer to him as good speed, not Hall of Speed. That tonal shrinkage undersells how dominant Lofton was in an era where speed was not only rare, it was a weapon. At number 9 is Glenn Burke, a trailblazer pushed off the field, 1976 to 1979. Glenn Burke's story isn't about WAR or OPS. It's about courage and consequence. He was an on-field asset, talented, versatile, and a stolen base threat. But more than that, he was the first MLB player to come out as gay. In 1976, in the homophobic climate of the time, that truth cost him his career. He was traded away and ultimately never played in the majors again. His potential silenced by prejudice. Today, his place in baseball history isn't about stats. It's about progress, pain, and the cost of visibility. Lending Burke his narrative space is overdue, and recognizing his story reminds us that baseball's forgotten legends are not always about numbers, they're about lived truth. And coming in at number 10 today is Bus Clarkson, Legends Lost to Segregation, 1938 to 1950s. Bus Clarkson's legend lives in projected numbers, a Negro Leagues outfielder with OPS estimates between 153 to 165, over 2,000 hits, and an MLE of 57 WAR. His career numbers rival any Hall of Famer, but because he never played in MLB, few casual fans know him. By all accounts, he was a five-star tool, quick, strong, smart, and consistent. But he played in an era and league intentionally kept separate from mainstream history. Until recently, even Negro League stats were inconsistently recorded, so the record books intentionally omitted them. Right now, reappraising Negro Leaguers like Clarkson is changing the narrative. The legends weren't just the icons who broke color, they're also the ones barred from the chance. Clarkson's story isn't forgotten, it was purposely erased. Here's what ties them all together: Harry Heilmann, Ralph Kiner, Roy Campanella, Cy Williams, Dave Stieb, Darrell Evans, Bobby Abreu, Kenny Lofton, Glenn Burke, and Bus Clarkson. Each had a form of greatness: dominance at the plate, pioneering impact, sustained excellence, or courage beyond the diamond. But each was sidelined by circumstance, illness, team context, bias, storytelling gaps. These aren't footnotes, they're missing chapters in baseball's story. Remember them, not because they fail the memory test, but because they pass the field test. History is richer for their names. Did we miss your favorite overlooked legend? Drop the name and why they matter down in the comments. If interest is high, we've already dug up 20 more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because baseball's lost stories are our next discovery. Until then, keep turning the pages of history, and thanks for watching.